Well, good afternoon. It's good to see you all this afternoon. We're getting to that time of year where I can't say afternoon anymore. I think another couple weeks and it'll have to be good evening. So we have that to look forward to. We also are in that time of year where it's not as hot. Can we say that? It's nice. I went for a very short walk this afternoon. It was very pleasant. So I appreciate all that. Appreciate the visitors with us. Appreciate seeing you all. From time to time, I've allowed my kids to make sermon requests. I've had to preach on mermaids before. Dagon apparently was pictured as a merman in some painting one time. Turns out that painting actually doesn't date back to the time of the Philistines, but we ran with it. So we did that. I had to preach on bunnies. They're an unclean animal, so that was a good lesson on clean and unclean. Caleb has asked me to preach on Kirby before, the Nintendo character. He eats things and takes their power, so it was a great sermon on y'all what you eat. So that was pretty good. Maybe. I've had to preach on Elsa from Frozen. Don't let it go, right? That's a bad thing. It'll turn your entire civilization into a frozen sort of evil place. So don't do that. Tonight, you all have the dubious honor, though, of hearing a sermon on Pokemon. So that's what we're going to try and tackle tonight. So hopefully there's a point. No, I'm just kidding. Pokemon are interesting, right? They've been around since the 90s. I remember they came out when I was a kid. It was a video game back then. And then since they've added cartoons and they've added the big thing, I guess, is the trading cards. And you buy the cards, you collect them, and you trade them, and they had all these things. And their tagline is, gotta catch them all. And the premise is that you're like a little Pokemon trainer, and you capture these little pocket monsters, and you put them in a Pokeball, and then you let them out, and they fight each other. And then they get stronger as they fight. Now, they don't kill each other. They just cause each other to faint. So it's not violent, I guess. But that's the whole kind of premise. And so then you have all these cards of the different little Pokemon you can collect. And then they have special edition cards and all those sorts of things. It's very exciting. Very exciting sort of thing. And it's been around for almost 30 years now, which is crazy. And then they invented the kind of, what do they call it, augmented reality game where you had your phone and you could find them in the real world or something. And those of us who are at Lutz remember that very vividly because apparently our church building was a hot spot. So you'd show up for church and you didn't have a parking space because everyone's there trying to catch Pokemon or something. And augmented reality is kind of interesting. So Pokemon have been around for a while. And in fact, based on the data that I found, their estimated value of the Pokemon franchise is somewhere between $113 and $147 billion. It is the highest grossing media franchise of all time. It is worth more than Mickey Mouse or Star Wars or Marvel. It is the brand within the world, constantly ranked as one of the most valuable media properties. And you got to catch them all, right? And that's kind of the way that they get you, because you got to get them all. Once you start, you need all of them. There's always another card. There's always another Pokemon. There's always the next thing. So you're engrossed, right? You need the next thing. And that's a problem, isn't it? Because collecting is fun and sometimes harmless, but it also could become this weird sort of obsession. Consumerism, right? Commercialization, or within church, we often talk about materialism. Obsessed with that next thing. It can become a disease, an obsession for people. Not maybe specifically Pokemon, but that idea of collecting and obtaining and always having something else. And it creates all sorts of financial problems. Dave Ramsey, a pretty famous guy, has his radio show, and all day, every day, he gets calls of people who are in a financial crisis because of their overspending. And he gives them a hard line on what they can and can't do until they get out of it. Now, I may not agree with everything Dave Ramsey says, but for the people who are calling in with mountains of credit card debt and car loans and everything else, that's what they need. You get free from it all. You got to break free from it. And he preaches that because it's a problem that we have in America. And you see it everywhere, always having to buy the next thing, whether you have the money for it or not. You finance it. You stack up the monthly payments, whatever. You got to collect it. But it isn't just about financial stuff, is it? It's like a way of life. It's this obsession with more. True consumptionism, right? Not just of the good itself, but of your time and your energy and your thoughts and always trying to plot out the next thing. And we become consumed by the things that we're trying to consume. This is the kind of sick irony of it all. Now, maybe you don't collect anything, and that's fine. But doesn't mean you can't be consumed, right? Because it isn't always about the material thing. It's about this attitude or this way of life or this perspective where you need the next promotion, the next achievement, the next sort of recognition, the next thing to get the 401k to a certain number or whatever it is. There's always that next thing that you have to have. And you're constantly striving for something. And because of that, the goalpost keeps moving on you. And that's just kind of the world we're in, right? We're always promising the next thing, the next model, the next level, the next version, the next release. They release a new cell phone every year. I don't know what the differences are, but they claim that it's better. Mountain bikes. The bicycle's been around for over 100 years, and every year there's a new model that somehow is better than the last one. Don't tell me how, but it's better. It's faster. It's lighter. It's this. It's that. It's going to make you better at the basketball shoes. There's a new basketball shoe every year that they have to design and release, and you have to get the new basketball shoe. Does it make you better at basketball? No, but it might, right? So we got to get it. We got to find out. That's the kind of world we live in, where there's always this next thing. And every time we finally get that next thing, we realize that our personal satisfaction has just kind of slipped away. And it's found in actually the next item, not the one that we have. The next achievement, the next goal. And it becomes this chasing of the horizon, right? Where no matter how fast you walk or how hard you run, you never actually get there because it's always out in front of you. And so the Bible speaks directly about this idea of contentment. In Philippians 4 and verse 11, it says, "Not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need." But what's interesting is he said he learned it, right? He developed it. He experienced it and learned the idea of contentment because it doesn't come naturally, right? As kids, we start off with our Christmas lists, the things that we want. We got Amazon. It's pretty smart. They send us every year a gift guide for the season, and they send it early, and the kids love it, and they get out their markers, and they all circle the stuff that they want. And that's great. And then Target is picked up on it. We got a Target book now that they go through. And they have the top toy that they got to get, right? This is the thing that they want. And we develop that attitude. It's natural to us to want these things. That's what's going to make me happy. This item, this next thing that we achieve. The world teaches us to crave more. We need more. But God teaches us to rest in what we already have, to find contentment, to find peace. He teaches us to learn those things. Go back to Pokemon for a second. Because the trick of it is, right, with things like Pokemon or card collecting or whatever it is that each pack, you don't know what's in it. It's like every pack is a mystery pack. And they do this with tons of kids' toys now. My kids like Squishmallows. And they make small ones, and you can buy a mystery pack that has 3 mystery Squishmallows in them. And you got to get all the Squishmallows. I don't know why they're called Squishmallows or what, but they're stuffed animal. And they got to get all the stuffed animals. And so you open them, and you got to find out what they are. And it's this addicting thing because I've got to collect them. And so we love the mystery pack, and we love to rip open the cards because we don't know. Maybe this has the rare card that I'm looking for. And you're like, this Pokemon card's worth $10,000 if I get that card, right? And it's baseball cards, whatever else. And it's the mystery. You got to open it and find out what's in it. And as soon as you collect them all, guess what happens? Oh, there's a new special edition series that came out. You had the EX series. Now there's the LX or whatever, you know. Oh, you have this card, but there's a foil version of it where it's shiny and shimmery. And whether it's the next thing, there's always there. And the pattern starts over again. You got to collect this one. McDonald's figured it out. It's Monopoly season, right? So they put the Monopoly pieces on. It's like, I got to get the Monopoly pieces. And it's like, well, they control what they're printing. It isn't random. There's one piece that's going to finish the set to give you the brand new ATV or whatever it is, right? And they get to control how many of those they print. So everyone thinks, if I just buy enough, I'll be the lucky one, right? There's no restrictions. They created the game and the rules themselves, but we got to collect them, and we get addicted to that next thing. And it's not about fun or hobbies or Pokemon card, right? Like that just becomes the foil, right? The image, the analogy for what we're talking about. When you start to turn your life into this kind of collecting attitude, where your friendships, your relationships, even your spiritual life becomes achievement-oriented, I have to do this next thing. That's when I will have attained. That's the problem. Because you've moved from contentment to idolatry. And it's such an easy thing to do. I mean, I use the guitar analogy a lot because I've been playing guitar. And it's tempting to say, I will consider myself a good guitar player when I can play this song. And then you figure out how to play it, and you're like, I'm still not any good. I've got to get the next song. And the danger is that you quit because you never feel like you achieved anything, because you can play the things that but there's always the next thing that's harder, right? You just start chasing those things as opposed to just enjoying being able to play what you can or whatever it is. That's the danger. Ecclesiastes 5:10 says, he who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity. You think it'll be enough, but it won't. When you base your life around those sorts of achievements, it's never enough. It's about the love of getting, the appetite for more. And we don't think about consumerism or collecting or this mindset as particularly dangerous because it seems harmless enough, because there's lots of healthy ways to participate in it. But it's wrapped in this kind of image of harmlessness, and that's what makes it all the more dangerous, because it can consume you so quickly and easily. We scripture reading in Matthew 6. It says in verse 21, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And the danger is we have to figure out where our treasure is. What do we actually hold on to? What do we actually value? If it's in your stuff, then that's where your heart is. It's in your stuff. If it's in your achievements, then your heart rises and falls with those achievements. If it's the next thing, then whatever that next thing is, then your heart will never be at rest, because the next thing never stops coming. It just keeps coming in front of us. Our job isn't to be buyers of the world. It's not our purpose. If that's what we're seeking, then we're never going to be satisfied. Think back to the garden. Because God put Adam and Eve in the garden and he gave them everything, right? Everything that was good to eat. They had animals, they had peace, they had everything. And what was the lie that Satan told them? Yeah, but you don't understand this. There's this thing you don't have, right? You don't know how to discern good and evil. You're not like God yet. And they're like, well, we're missing something. We need to fill the void of what's lacking, right? So they're convinced and they take of the fruit and they eat. And yet you look back on it and you think all the pain and all the sin and all the suffering that occurred because of that attitude, it's the same thing that eats away at us if we're not careful. Certain serpent's temptation was evil. You can have more. Or maybe you're missing out on something. And it's the same lie we hear every day. It's the same lie that temptations of every kind spout out. There's this part of life that you haven't experienced that's really good. You're missing out on this sort of freedom, or this liberty, or this activity, or this thing. And we're like, that does sound pretty good. And we're lured away by the lies of it all. And maybe at the root of all this is like a sense of fear. The fear of scarcity, the fear of missing out, the fear of not having done something that you otherwise would want to do. Fear that someone else will have something more, that they got to experience something great that I didn't. And we're afraid that they're going to have that. And so it isn't enough. We're afraid that it isn't enough. But that's what Jesus is talking about earlier in Matthew 6. He says, verse 25, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you put on. And he goes on to say later, look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? And this promise of provision, of food, should free us from the anxiety of needing that more that exists. Doesn't mean you don't stop working hard. Doesn't mean that you're not wise with your money, any of those things. Doesn't mean it's bad to have things. The problem is when those things become that obsession, that next thing becomes the obsession. I was thinking about this on the way over. My granddad grew up in the Great Depression. Fought in World War II. The greatest generation, they say, right? And I remember talking to him, and he would tell stories from time to time. And we're walking through the woods with him. And he would just say these things casually. And like in hindsight, it was like I was like 6, and like I'm grateful that I remember it, but it's like, why are you telling this to a 6-year-old? But he would say things like, yeah, we'd go out with 3 bullets, and if we didn't come back with 3 squirrels, we didn't eat. And that was his way of bragging about how good of a shot he was, right? Because he was like, I don't miss, right? And he had those kind of subtle points. He would say things like, I don't know, striking a match with a bullet or whatever. It's not that hard, People say that stuff. But anyway, he talks about those experiences, and you think about that. And he would talk about one of these old guys, you sit around, they start talking about the good old days. You look at them and tell them they're a liar because these all are the good old days. This is his line. Because he remembered those kind of dark days where you didn't have anything to eat and you had to go eat squirrels or have nothing at all, right? Kind of interesting kind of context. And you'd say those things. But as I was thinking about that, it made me think about what Paul said, we read earlier in Philippians 4. Makes me think of these passages, what Jesus is saying in Matthew chapter 6. Contentment. Learning how to abound and how to be poor and have less than, right? And sometimes it takes having something taken away to find that, maybe. Hopefully it doesn't require that for us to learn contentment. But it is something that we learn and we develop and that as Christians we should have. In Mark chapter 10, there's the story of the rich young ruler. And this guy comes to Jesus and he's, what do I need to inherit eternal life? And Jesus says you need to, do these commandments. He says, well, I kept all these since my youth up. Claims you have done everything right. But Jesus looks at him with love and says, you lack one thing. Go sell all that you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And come and follow me. And the guy walked away sad. Because this consumption attitude, this having more and collecting and all these things were too many things for him to give up. They became too valuable to him. Jesus didn't condemn him. He didn't say you're going to hell because you're obsessed with these material things, but he said this is what you need to do. And the man went away sad because he knew in that moment that this was a barrier for him. And that's the danger. And you don't have to be rich to be consumed by it. You don't have to have the things to be consumed by those things. Simply, we fight against that with developing and learning contentment. And contentment is not natural. It is supernatural. It grows when our gratitude grows, when our thanksgiving exists for what we have. My dad used to, we'd go canoeing on the Hillsborough River. And we'd pack some sandwiches, bologna sandwiches or something, we paddle down for a while. We had a particular route we do. Hillsborough River's not particularly beautiful. And it's pretty swampy. But we'd go and we'd paddle down and we'd stop about halfway and we'd get our sandwiches and we'd eat them. And he would say, wonder what the poor folk are doing today. I always liked that. Because one, we were rich enough to have the free time to be doing something as opposed to being working, right? Like it's a true recognition of the prosperity that we had. But it also was kind of clever to me because what we were doing didn't cost a lot of money. It wasn't some expensive thing that was unattainable for people. We're just sitting here eating our bologna sandwiches in the sunshine, sitting on the river, enjoying each other's company. And those sorts of things and attitudes and lessons, I think, teach us this idea of contentment. We don't have to have everything to find those moments of peace. Sit in the backyard and enjoy the sunshine on a beautiful day. It's free. To be grateful to God for moments like these where we get to worship together doesn't cost us a lot compared to the consumerism that exists of having to chase the next item. Every time we stop and thank God for what we have, we're training our hearts to resist the lie that we need more. We're teaching ourselves contentment. And I try to think about that, daily. I think we try to develop that gratitude, to pause and take a moment and be grateful for our kids while we're sitting at the dinner table, right? When we get to breathe in deeply on a nice, fresh, crisp morning, which don't come too often in Florida, so we're particularly grateful of those, right? When we get to open our Bible and read the words of Jesus and the love that God had for us and find a moment of peace in that. You're holding a treasure that can't be bought or traded or upgraded. You have the gift that God has given. I don't know if I should read this next one. Maybe we should change the Pokemon slogan instead of "Gotta catch 'em all, gotta thank him for all." That's pretty cheesy. But it's there, so we got through it. But I mean, that's, as opposed to chasing more, be thankful for what you have. Every blessing, every mercy, every small piece of the daily grace that God has given us. James 1:17 says, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights. Christianity is not about collecting all the things. It's about collecting the gratitude towards God for what we have. The acts of love, the steps of faith, the encouragement that we can have towards one another, the chances to fellowship with one another. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Limited editions, collector's editions, right? Collectibles everywhere. And I've realized that everybody likes to make a collector's edition of something, a limited release, and they always sell, no matter how expensive they make them, because it's like, well, they're not going to make these again, right? This is my only chance to get one of these. I have to have it. And they know that. So manufacturers have that attitude. But that's not the nature of the kingdom of heaven. It's not a limited release, special edition that you can only buy once. It's there for all of us to have and to attain and to hold on to. It doesn't fade. It becomes more powerful, more treasured over time. Talk about Pokemon. Guess we got the Pokemon sermon. I'm not anti-Pokemon, by the way. My kids have plenty of cards. Maybe I need to rethink that now, though. Maybe I've talked myself out of that, letting my kids collect the cards. I'm developing bad habits in them or something. I don't know. Probably not. Maybe. I don't know. But that's the attitude of the world, right? Got to catch them all. Got to have them all. As opposed to Jesus, who just asks us to follow him, to give him our heart, because he's given us his life. Hebrews 13:5 says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. And that's the truth that sets us free from this sort of consumerism. We don't need to think in terms of having to have the next sort of thing. We need to be appreciative and content with what we have. And I think that's an important lesson. Contentment's hard. I think it's something we're all constantly striving and working on. Hopefully this is encouraging to think about it for a few moments tonight. Try and think about how we can be more content and grateful for what we have. I know it's helpful for me to spend some time on that. But as we're talking about this, thinking about these things, maybe you recognize that you lack contentment and you'd like to find that there's something that's keeping you from God and you need us to pray for you and encourage you. Or maybe you'd rather commit yourself to God, commit your life to him, and receive the blessings that he offers. If we can pray for you or baptize you or do anything for you, please let us know as we stand and sing this song.